The wind cut through the parking lot like a knife, and Daniel pulled his thin jacket tighter around his chest. November in this town meant cold mornings and even colder afternoons. He checked his phone again. The screen showed 2:47 p.m. His shift started at 2:30. Great, just great. His boss had already warned him twice this month about being late. One more time and he might lose this job, and he couldn't afford that. Not with his mom's medical bills piling up like snowdrifts in winter. Daniel threw his grocery bag into the passenger seat of his beat-up Honda and was about to climb in when he heard it. A soft grunt, followed by the metallic rattle of a shopping cart. He looked up. An old woman stood 3 cars away, wrestling with a shopping cart that seemed determined to roll away from her. The wind whipped her white hair across her face. She wore a coat that looked too thin for this weather, and her hands, Daniel noticed, were shaking as she tried to lift a heavy bag from the cart. People walked past her, a man in a business suit, a woman talking loudly on her phone, a teenager with headphones covering his ears. Nobody stopped. Nobody even slowed down. Daniel glanced at his phone again. 2:48 p.m., he should go. He really should go. The old woman dropped the bag. Oranges exploded across the pavement, rolling in every direction like tiny orange marbles. One rolled right under Daniel's car. The woman bent down slowly, her hand on the cart for support. Her knees cracked loud enough for Daniel to hear from where he stood. Daniel felt something twist in his chest. He remembered his own grandmother before she passed, struggling to carry her own groceries. He remembered wishing someone had been there to help her. He looked at his phone one more time, then shoved it in his pocket. "Ma'am, let me help you with that." The woman looked up, surprised. Her eyes were a faded blue, the kind that had seen a lot of years. She smiled, and her whole face changed. "Oh, you don't have to do that, young man." "I know," Daniel said, already picking up the oranges, "but I'm going to anyway." He gathered the fruit quickly, placing them back in the plastic bag. Then he grabbed the heavy bags from her cart, one in each hand. They were heavier than he expected. Canned goods, mostly. Some pasta boxes, a gallon of milk. "Which car is yours?" he asked. She pointed to an old sedan, powder blue with rust spots along the bottom. The kind of car that had been faithful for decades but was showing its age. Daniel carried the bags over and carefully placed them in her trunk. The woman followed slowly, still pushing the empty cart. "You're very kind," she said softly. "Most people just walk by." "Yeah, well," Daniel shrugged. "It's just groceries." "Maybe to you," she said. "But to an old woman with arthritis, it's the world." She held out her hand. "I'm Margaret." "Daniel." He shook her hand gently. Her skin was paper thin and cool to the touch. "Are you from around here, Daniel?" "Born and raised. I work over at the warehouse on 5th Street. Or I will if I can get there before my boss fires me." He laughed, but it came out tight, anxious. Margaret's eyes studied him for a moment. Really studied him. It wasn't the way most people looked at you when they were being polite. It was deeper than that. Like she was reading something written between the lines. "You work hard," she said. It wasn't a question. 2 jobs, actually. The warehouse and weekend delivery driving. My mom's been sick and the hospital bills. He stopped. Why was he telling this stranger about his problems? "Sorry, you don't need to hear all that," I asked, didn't I? Margaret's smile was warm. "Your mother is lucky to have a son like you." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I'm just doing what anyone would do." "No," Margaret said firmly. "You're doing what you would do. There's a difference." She returned the shopping cart to the cart corral, which was only a few feet away. Daniel noticed she moved slowly, like every step took effort. When she came back, she reached into her purse. "Please let me give you something." "No, ma'am." Daniel held up his hands. "I don't want your money. I was just helping." Margaret looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right. But thank you, Daniel, truly. You're welcome. Stay warm out here, okay?" He jogged back to his car, climbed in, and started the engine. In his rearview mirror, he could see Margaret still standing by her car, watching him. He waved once, then pulled out of the parking lot. His phone buzzed. A text from his boss. "Where are you?" Daniel pressed the gas pedal harder. By the time he got to the warehouse, he was 23 minutes late. His boss, Mr. Patterson, was waiting at the loading dock, arms crossed over his barrel chest. His face was red, which was never a good sign. "Daniel, my office now." The lecture lasted 15 minutes. Words like unreliable and disappointed and can't keep making exceptions. bounced around the small office. Daniel stood there and took it, nodding at the right moments, apologizing when he was supposed to. In the end, Mr. Patterson gave him one final warning. One more late arrival and he was done. Daniel spent the rest of his shift hauling boxes and trying not to think about how close he'd come to losing everything. By the time he clocked out at 11 p.m., his back ached and his fingers were numb from the cold. He drove home in silence. No radio. Just the hum of the engine and the occasional rattle from somewhere under the hood. His apartment was dark when he arrived. His roommate Tyler was already asleep. Daniel heated up leftover pizza in the microwave and ate it standing over the sink, too tired to sit down. As he was getting ready for bed, he thought about the old woman, Margaret. He wondered if she'd made it home okay, if she'd managed to carry all those groceries inside by herself. He hoped someone was there to help her. Then he thought about the look in her eyes when she'd studied his face. That strange, searching look, like she'd been looking for something specific and had maybe found it. Daniel shook his head. He was overthinking things. It was just a random act of kindness in a grocery store parking lot. By tomorrow, he'd probably forget about it entirely. He fell asleep within minutes, exhausted from the long day. He had no idea that across town, in a house much bigger than his tiny apartment, Margaret sat at an antique wooden desk with a fountain pen in her hand. She wrote slowly, carefully on cream-colored stationery. She paused occasionally, looking at a framed photograph on her desk, a young man in military uniform from decades ago. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. Margaret looked at the photo for a long time. Then she looked down at the half-written letter in front of her. She picked up the pen again and continued writing. What she wrote in those quiet moments would change everything. But Daniel didn't know that yet. He was sound asleep, dreaming of nothing in particular, unaware that his simple act of kindness had set something in motion, something that would transform his entire life in ways he couldn't possibly imagine. The letter sat on Margaret's desk, waiting to be sealed in an envelope, waiting to be mailed, waiting to find its way to a young man who'd stopped when everyone else had walked past. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just stopping, just helping, just choosing to be kind when it would have been easier to walk away. Daniel had made that choice in a cold parking lot on a November afternoon. Now, everything was about to change. 3 days passed, and Daniel forgot all about the old woman in the parking lot. Life had a way of doing that. Work consumed everything. The warehouse during the day, delivery driving on the weekends, and somewhere in between trying to visit his mom at the care facility. There wasn't much room left for random memories of strangers. Thursday evening, Daniel trudged up the stairs to his apartment on the 3rd floor. The elevator had been broken for 2 weeks. His legs felt like concrete blocks. Tyler was sprawled on the couch, eating cereal straight from the box and watching some reality show where people yelled at each other for no reason. "Dude, you look dead," Tyler said, mouth full. "Feel dead." Daniel dropped his backpack by the door and headed to the kitchen. The sink was full of dishes, again. "Did the mail come?" "Yeah, it's on the counter. Just bills, probably." Daniel rifled through the small stack. Electric bill, credit card statement he didn't want to open, a flyer for a pizza place, and then at the bottom a cream-colored envelope. It stood out immediately. The paper was thick, expensive-looking. His name and address were written in elegant cursive handwriting, the kind nobody used anymore. The kind his grandmother used to write in birthday cards. No return address. Daniel turned it over. A wax seal held the flap closed. An actual wax seal, like something from an old movie. "What's that?" Tyler had appeared beside him, peering over his shoulder. "I don't know." "Well, open it." Daniel slid his finger under the seal, breaking it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of the same cream-colored paper, folded once. And something else. A photograph. He pulled out the photo first. It was old, faded at the edges, black and white. A young man in a military uniform stood at attention, wearing a serious expression. He looked about 20 years old. The photo had that timeless quality of pictures from the 50s or 60s. Daniel stared at it. Something about the man's face seemed familiar, but he couldn't place why. "Who's that?" Tyler asked. "No idea." Daniel unfolded the letter. The same elegant handwriting filled the page. "Dear Daniel," it began. His heart skipped. Someone knew his name. Someone had tracked down his address. "I hope this letter finds you well. You may not remember me, but we met 3 days ago in the grocery store parking lot. You helped an old woman with her shopping bags. That old woman was me. I wanted to thank you properly, but you left before I could. Your kindness that afternoon meant more to me than you could possibly know. In a world where most people walk past those in need, you stopped. You helped. You asked for nothing in return. I have been thinking about you since that day. There is something I would like to discuss with you. Something important. Something that could change your life if you're willing to hear me out. I know this must seem strange, perhaps even suspicious. I would understand if you threw this letter away and forgot about it. But I'm asking you to trust me, just as I trusted you when you approached me in that parking lot. Please come to my home this Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. The address is 1847 Willow Creek Road. Come alone. I promise you this is not a trick or a scam. I simply have a proposition I'd like to discuss with you in person. The photograph enclosed is of my son David. He passed away 15 years ago. I'll explain more when you come. If you choose not to come, I'll understand. But I hope you will. With gratitude and respect, Margaret Williams. Daniel read the letter twice. Then a third time. What does it say? Tyler grabbed the paper from his hands before Daniel could stop him. His roommate's eyes scanned the page quickly. Dude, this is weird. This is super weird. Give it back. Daniel snatched the letter. You're not seriously thinking about going, are you? Tyler's eyes were wide. This is exactly how every horror movie starts. Old lady lures young guy to mysterious house. Next thing you know, you're in someone's basement. She's like 80 years old, Tyler. So, ever heard of accomplices? This could be some kind of scam. She probably targets nice guys like you, makes up some sob story, and then boom. You wake up without your kidneys. Daniel looked at the letter again, then at the photograph. The young man in uniform stared back at him with serious eyes. Why would she include a picture of her dead son if this was a scam? To manipulate you emotionally. That's scamming 101, man. Daniel walked to the living room and sat on the couch. He pulled out his phone and typed the address into Google Maps. 1847 Willow Creek Road. The street view loaded. A large property appeared on the screen. A beautiful Victorian-style house with a well-maintained yard. Tall trees. A stone pathway leading to the front door. It didn't look like a murder house. It looked like the kind of place rich people lived. He switched to a regular search. Margaret Williams, Willow Creek Road. A few results popped up. An obituary from 10 years ago for Robert Williams, prominent businessman and philanthropist. Survived by his wife, Margaret Williams. There was a photo of the couple at some charity event. Margaret looked younger, but it was definitely her. Same kind eyes, same gentle smile. Another search. David Williams obituary, more results. David Williams, age 32, died in a car accident 15 years ago. Remembered for his volunteer work at local shelters and community centers. Survived by his parents, Robert and Margaret Williams. Daniel stared at his phone screen. Everything in the letter checked out. This wasn't a scam. This was a real person who'd experienced real loss. But why did she want to see him? Find anything? Tyler asked. She's real. Her husband was some kind of businessman. They had money. Their son died in a car accident. Okay, so she's a real rich person. That doesn't make this less weird. What does she want from you? I don't know, exactly. You don't know, which is why you shouldn't go. Daniel set his phone down and picked up the photograph again. He studied the young man's face more carefully this time. Strong jawline, deep-set eyes, a slight dimple in his chin. Then it hit him. The familiarity he couldn't place before. The guy looked like him. Not exactly, but enough that someone might notice the resemblance. Same face shape, same dark hair, same eyes. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. Tyler, look at this photo. Who does he look like? Tyler leaned in, squinting. I don't know. Some dead guy from the 50s. Look closer. Tyler's eyes went wide. Oh, that's weird. He kind of looks like you. Like if you joined the military and went back in time. Daniel felt something shift in his chest. Was that why Margaret had been staring at him so intently in the parking lot? Had she seen her dead son in his face? The thought made him sad and uncomfortable at the same time. This is getting weirder by the second, Tyler muttered. Please tell me you're not going. Daniel didn't answer. He was thinking about his mom, lying in that care facility bed. About the bills that kept coming. About working 2 jobs just to barely keep his head above water. What if Margaret wanted to help him? What if this proposition was something good? But what if Tyler was right? What if this was dangerous? I don't know, Daniel finally said. I need to think about it. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the letter on his nightstand. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Margaret's face in the parking lot. That searching look, like she'd been looking for something specific and had found it in him. He thought about the photograph, about a son who'd died too young, about a mother who'd lost everything. He thought about the address on Willow Creek Road, about what might be waiting for him there. Saturday was 2 days away, 2 days to decide if he was brave enough or foolish enough to find out what Margaret Williams wanted. 2 days to decide if he would walk through a door that, once opened, might change everything. Daniel rolled over, pulling the blanket up to his chin. He already knew what he was going to do. Deep down, he'd known from the moment he'd opened that letter. He was going to go. He had to know. Saturday arrived faster than Daniel expected. He stood in front of his bathroom mirror, second-guessing everything. He'd changed shirts 3 times already. What do you wear to meet a mysterious old woman who might or might not be about to change your life? He settled on a simple button-down and jeans, clean, presentable, not trying too hard. Tyler knocked on the doorframe. Last chance to bail, man. We could just play video games and pretend this never happened. I'm going. All right. But I'm tracking your location on my phone, and if you don't text me by 4 o'clock, I'm calling the cops. Deal. The drive to Willow Creek Road took 20 minutes. Daniel's hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. His Honda rattled more than usual, as if it sensed his nervousness. The neighborhood changed as he drove. The small, cramped houses gave way to larger ones with actual yards. Then those gave way to estates with iron gates and long driveways. Willow Creek Road sat at the end of a quiet street lined with oak trees. The house was exactly as it had appeared in the Google images. Victorian architecture painted a soft yellow with white trim. A wraparound porch. Flower beds that showed signs of careful maintenance despite the late season. It wasn't a mansion, but it was comfortable. The kind of place that spoke of old money. The quiet kind that didn't need to show off. Daniel parked on the street and sat there for a moment, gathering courage. Through the front window, he could see a lamp glowing in what looked like a living room. His phone buzzed. Tyler. You there yet? Yeah, about to go in. Remember, 4 o'clock. Or I'm calling SWAT. Daniel pocketed his phone and walked up the stone pathway. Each step felt significant, like he was crossing some invisible line. The porch steps creaked under his weight. Before he could even knock, the front door opened. Margaret stood there smiling. She wore a simple cardigan and slacks, her white hair pulled back neatly. She looked exactly as he remembered, except her eyes seemed brighter somehow. Happier. Daniel, you came. I almost didn't, he admitted, but you did. That's what matters. Please come in. The inside of the house smelled like old books and lavender. Hardwood floors gleamed under his feet. Family photos covered nearly every surface. The walls held paintings in ornate frames. Everything felt lived in, loved, but also carefully preserved. Would you like some tea? Coffee? Margaret asked, closing the door behind him. I'm okay, thank you. Then please sit. She gestured to a floral couch in the living room. Daniel sat, his hands folded in his lap. Margaret settled into a leather armchair across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it was heavy with expectation. I imagine you have questions, Margaret finally said. A few, yeah, she smiled. Where would you like me to start? Why did you invite me here? Margaret's expression grew serious. She reached for a photo frame on the side table next to her chair and handed it to Daniel. It was the same young man from the photograph she'd mailed him, but in this picture, he was older. Maybe 30. He wore casual clothes and was laughing at something off camera. His whole face was alive with joy. That's David, my son. I'm sorry for your loss, Daniel said, meaning it. Thank you. It's been 15 years, but some days it feels like yesterday. She paused, gathering her thoughts. David was special. Not because he was my son, though of course I'm biased. He was special because of how he lived. He never walked past someone who needed help. Not once. Daniel looked down at the photograph. He volunteered at homeless shelters every weekend. He worked at a community center teaching kids to read. When he died, he was coming back from delivering food to an elderly neighbor who couldn't leave her house. Margaret's voice cracked slightly, but she continued. A drunk driver ran a red light. David died instantly. He was 32 years old. I'm so sorry. My husband Robert died 10 years ago. Heart attack. After he passed, I was alone in this big house with nothing but memories. I thought about selling it, moving somewhere smaller, but I couldn't. This was David's home. These walls hold his laughter. She stood and walked to the fireplace mantel where more photos stood in a neat row. For years, I've been trying to figure out what to do with everything Robert and I built. We had money, a good life. But what's the point of all this if it just sits here gathering dust? Daniel didn't know what to say, so he stayed quiet. Margaret turned to face him. Then I met you, in a parking lot, on a cold afternoon, and you stopped to help an old woman who most people ignored. You were late for work. You were stressed, but you stopped anyway. It was just groceries. No, Margaret's voice was firm. It was character. It was kindness without expecting anything in return. It was exactly what David would have done. She returned to her chair and leaned forward. When I got home that day, I couldn't stop thinking about you, about the way you helped without hesitation. I had my lawyer find your information. Don't be alarmed, it was all legal, I assure you. I needed to know if that kindness was real or just a one-time thing. Daniel felt a chill. You investigated me? Yes, and I apologize if that feels invasive, but I needed to be sure. I learned about your mother's illness, your 2 jobs, the fact that you've never been in trouble with the law, that your coworkers describe you as reliable and kind, that you volunteer when you can, even though you barely have time to sleep. Daniel's face grew hot. Having a stranger know all this about him felt wrong, even if Margaret's intentions seemed good. I know how this must sound, Margaret continued, but please understand. I'm 78 years old. I don't have much time left. What do you mean? Margaret folded her hands in her lap. I was diagnosed with cancer 6 months ago. Stage 4. The doctors give me maybe 6 months, possibly less. The air seemed to leave the room. Daniel stared at her, not knowing what to say. I'm not telling you this for sympathy, Margaret said gently. I'm telling you because I need you to understand why I brought you here. Why this matters so much to me. She reached into a drawer in the side table and pulled out a manila envelope. She held it for a moment as if weighing it, then handed it to Daniel. Before you open that, I need to tell you something. What I'm about to offer you will change your life. But it comes with responsibility. With obligation. If you're not ready for that, you can walk out that door right now and I won't think less of you. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he took the envelope. It was heavier than he expected. What is this? Open it. He undid the clasp and pulled out the contents. A check fell into his lap. He picked it up, and his heart nearly stopped. $50,000 made out to him, signed by Margaret Williams. I don't understand, he whispered. That's for your mother's medical bills, Margaret said. Every penny you owe. I want you to pay them off. All of them. Daniel couldn't breathe. $50,000. It was more money than he'd ever seen in his life. It would wipe out everything. His mom could get the care she needed. He could quit one of his jobs. He could finally sleep at night without worrying about debt collectors. I can't accept this. Yes, you can. But there's more. Margaret pulled out a document from the same drawer. I'm also revising my will. When I pass away, this house goes to you. The room started spinning. Daniel gripped the arm of the couch. Wait, what? No, that's insane. You don't even know me. I know enough, Margaret said calmly. But there are conditions. You must use whatever money remains after your mother's bills to help others in need. You must volunteer at the local community center for at least 1 year, and when you inherit this house, you'll continue David's legacy by using part of it for charitable work. Daniel stood up, pacing. This was too much. Way too much. Why me? There are thousands of people who need help, who deserve this more than I do. Because you helped when you didn't have to, Margaret said simply. Because you remind me of my son. Because I believe you'll honor this gift by paying it forward. Daniel looked at the check in his hands, at Margaret's hopeful face, at the photographs of David smiling from the mantel. His mind raced with possibilities and doubts and fears. I need time to think about this. Of course, take a week. But Daniel? Margaret stood and walked over to him, placing her hand on his arm. Don't let fear keep you from accepting a blessing. David would have taken this opportunity to help others. I think you will too. Daniel left the house in a daze, the envelope clutched in his hands. His whole world turned upside down. Daniel sat in his car for 20 minutes before he could even turn the key. The envelope lay on the passenger seat. Inside it, a check that could change everything. A promise of a house, a future he'd never dared to imagine, but also a weight, a responsibility, an obligation to a stranger who saw something in him he wasn't sure he possessed. His phone buzzed. Tyler. Dude, it's 4:15. You alive? Daniel typed back with shaking fingers. Yeah, on my way home. You won't believe what just happened. The drive back felt surreal. Every traffic light, every turn, every familiar street looked different somehow. Like he was seeing the world through new eyes. When he got home, Tyler practically tackled him at the door. Tell me everything. Did she try to harvest your organs? Are you in a cult now? Why do you look like you've seen a ghost? Daniel walked past him, set the envelope on the kitchen counter, and sat down heavily at their small dining table. She gave me $50,000. Tyler froze. She what? And when she dies, I get her house. You're joking. I wish I was. Daniel put his head in his hands. This is insane, right? This is absolutely insane. Tyler grabbed the envelope and pulled out the check. His jaw dropped. Holy, this is real. This is a real check. Daniel, this could pay off everything. I know. Your mom could get better treatment. You could quit the warehouse. You could actually sleep for more than 5 hours a night. I know. Tyler sat down across from him. So why do you look like someone just died? Because there are conditions. I have to use the extra money to help other people. I have to volunteer at a community center for a year, and when I get the house, I have to keep using it for charity work. Okay, so? That doesn't sound so bad. It's not my money, Tyler, it's hers. And she's only giving it to me because I look like her dead son and I helped her with groceries one time. What if I'm not the person she thinks I am? What if I take this money and mess everything up? Tyler was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What would you do if you didn't have the money? Keep working myself to death, I guess. And your mom? Daniel felt his chest tighten. Keep hoping the insurance covers enough. Keep praying she doesn't get worse. And now you have a choice. You can keep drowning or you can accept help from someone who wants to give it. Tyler pushed the check across the table. This lady doesn't know you like I do, but I do. And you're exactly the kind of person who would use this to help people. You already do that, even when you've got nothing to give. Daniel thought about all the times he'd shared his lunch with the new guy at work. The times he'd covered shifts for single parents who needed to be with their kids. The few dollars he'd given to the homeless man who sat outside the grocery store, even when he barely had enough for his own food. What if she's wrong about me? Then prove her right, Tyler said simply. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep again. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything Margaret had said. He thought about David, a man who'd spent his life helping others and died doing exactly that. A man whose mother was so desperate to keep his memory alive that she'd give away her fortune to a stranger. He thought about his own mom, lying in that care facility, trying to smile through the pain because she didn't want him to worry. He thought about the weight of $50,000 and what it meant to accept it. Around 3 a.m, Daniel made his decision. The next day was Sunday. Daniel drove to the care facility where his mom stayed. She was in the common room playing cards with 2 other residents. When she saw him, her whole face lit up. Daniel, I wasn't expecting you today. She looked tired. Thinner than last week. The treatments were taking their toll. Hey, Mom, can we talk? Privately. They went to her room. It was small but clean. Photos of Daniel at various ages covered the walls. His kindergarten graduation, his high school football team. His face younger and more hopeful, staring back at him. What's wrong? His mom asked, settling into the chair by the window. Nothing's wrong. Actually, something really weird happened. He sat on the edge of her bed. And I need your advice. He told her everything. The parking lot, the letter, the visit to Margaret's house, the check, the house, the conditions. His mom listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Say something, Daniel finally said. Do you trust her? His mom asked. I think so, yeah. Do you want to help people? Of course, and then what's stopping you? Daniel stood and walked to the window. Outside, other families were visiting. Kids running on the lawn, old people in wheelchairs enjoying the autumn sun. I don't want to be someone's replacement, he said quietly. I don't want to be her dead son. I want to be me. His mom stood and came to his side. She was shorter than him now. When had that happened? She placed her hand on his arm. Baby, she's not asking you to be her son. She's asking you to honor his memory by being yourself, by being the kind, generous person you already are. But what if I fail? What if I take this money and I can't live up to what she expects? Then you try again. That's what life is, trying, failing, trying again. She squeezed his arm. You've been killing yourself trying to save me. Let someone save you for once. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. I'm scared, Mom. Good, that means it matters. Anything worth doing is scary. He looked down at her. What would you do? She smiled. I'd cash that check. I'd pay those bills. And then I'd spend every day trying to be worthy of the gift I'd been given. Monday morning, Daniel called Margaret. She answered on the second ring. I'll do it, he said. I accept. All of it, he heard her breath catch. Oh, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you so much. But I need you to know something. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm just a regular guy who helped with some groceries. And that's exactly why you're the right person, Margaret said softly. That afternoon, Daniel deposited the check. The bank teller's eyes went wide when she saw the amount, but she processed it without comment. The next day, he paid off his mother's medical bills. All of them. Every single one. He sat at his kitchen table with his laptop, clicking submit payment over and over until the balance read 0. When the last payment went through, Daniel put his head down on the table and cried. Not sad tears, relief tears. The kind that come when a weight you've been carrying for years finally lifts. Tyler found him like that and didn't say anything. Just sat down and waited until Daniel was ready. It's real, Daniel finally said. It's actually real. Yeah, man, it is. The following Saturday, Daniel showed up at the community center Margaret had mentioned. It was a small building in a rough part of town. Paint peeling. Windows that needed washing. But inside it was warm. Kids ran around playing basketball. Adults sat in groups talking and laughing. A woman in her 50s approached him. Can I help you? My name's Daniel. I'm here to volunteer. She looked surprised. We don't get many new volunteers. What made you want to help? Daniel thought about Margaret. About David, about his mom. About the chain of kindness that had led him here. Someone helped me when I needed it, he said. I'm just trying to pay it forward. The woman smiled. Well, we can always use an extra pair of hands. Come on. I'll show you around. As Daniel followed her through the center, he felt something shift inside him. Purpose, maybe, or hope. Or just the simple satisfaction of knowing he was exactly where he was supposed to be. Over the next few months, Daniel's life transformed in ways he never expected. He quit the warehouse job. The delivery driving on weekends was enough now that he wasn't drowning in debt. He spent his weekdays at the community center, helping however he could. Teaching kids to read, serving meals, listening to people's stories. He met people who'd lost everything and were trying to rebuild. Single mothers working 3 jobs, veterans struggling with invisible wounds, kids who just needed someone to believe in them. And slowly Daniel realized something. Margaret hadn't given him money. She'd given him permission. Permission to be the person he'd always wanted to be, but never had the time or resources to become. One evening, as he was cleaning up after a community dinner, his phone rang. Margaret. Daniel. I need to see you soon. Can you come tomorrow? Something in her voice made his stomach drop. Of course. Is everything okay? A long pause. Just come, please. He drove to Willow Creek Road the next day with a sense of dread in his chest. When Margaret opened the door, he understood why. She'd lost weight. A lot of it. Her skin had a gray tinge. She moved slowly, carefully, like every step hurt. The cancer was winning. Come in, she said softly. There's something I need to give you. Margaret led Daniel to her living room, moving slower than he'd ever seen her move. She lowered herself into her chair with visible effort, then gestured for him to sit. How long? Daniel asked quietly. The doctors say a few weeks, maybe a month if I'm lucky. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm not afraid, Daniel. I've had a good life. I'm ready to see my husband again. My son. Daniel's throat tightened. I wish I'd had more time to know you. We have the time we have. That's all anyone gets. She reached for an envelope on the side table. Another cream-colored one, like the first letter she'd sent him. I need you to do something for me. Anything. Don't open this until after I'm gone. Promise me. Daniel took the envelope. It was heavier than the first one. I promise. Good. Margaret leaned back in her chair. Now tell me about the community center. How's the work going? For the next hour, Daniel talked. He told her about the kids he was tutoring, about the woman who'd finally gotten a job after he helped her practice interview skills, about the elderly man who came in every day just to have someone to talk to. Margaret listened with her eyes closed, a peaceful smile on her face. You remind me so much of David, she said when he finished. Not because you look like him, but because of your heart. He would have liked you very much. I wish I could have met him. In a way you have. His spirit lives in the work you're doing. That's the whole point, Daniel. We don't really die as long as someone carries forward what we believed in. 3 weeks later, Daniel got the call. Margaret had been admitted to hospice. She was asking for him. He drove to the facility, his heart heavy. Tyler had offered to come with him, but Daniel needed to do this alone. Margaret's room was small but filled with flowers. Photos of David and her late husband sat on the nightstand. She looked tiny in the hospital bed, like she was already halfway to somewhere else. But when she saw Daniel, her eyes opened fully. You came. Of course I came. He pulled a chair close to her bed and took her hand. It felt like paper in his palm. I don't have much time, she whispered. But I needed to see you one more time, to make sure you understand. Understand what? That this was never about replacing David. This was about continuing what he started. About proving that kindness isn't dead in this world. A tear slid down her cheek. You've made an old woman's last days full of hope. Thank you. Daniel couldn't speak. He just held her hand and tried not to cry. The house is yours, she continued. Everything is arranged. My lawyer will contact you. But remember your promise. Use it to help others. I will. I swear, I know you will. That's why I chose you. Her eyes started to close. Tell me about the center again. The kids. Daniel talked until her breathing slowed, until her hand went slack in his, until a nurse came in and gently told him it was time to go. Margaret Williams died peacefully that evening, surrounded by photos of the people she'd loved and the memory of a young man who'd stopped to help her with groceries. The funeral was small. A few distant relatives, some people from the charities she'd supported, and Daniel sitting in the front row feeling like he'd lost someone he'd barely had time to know. After the service, Margaret's lawyer approached him, an older man with kind eyes and a worn briefcase. Mr. Daniel, I have something for you. He handed Daniel a folder. Inside were the deed to the house, financial documents, and one final letter. She wanted you to read this after the funeral. Alone. Daniel drove to Margaret's house. His house now, though it didn't feel real. He sat on the porch steps, the same steps he'd climbed that first Saturday, nervous and uncertain. He opened the letter with shaking hands. Dear Daniel, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope my funeral wasn't too depressing. I told them to keep it short. Nobody likes sitting through long funerals. I want you to know that the last few months of my life were the happiest I'd been since losing David. Not because I was dying, but because I got to see proof that goodness still exists in this world, that people like you and my son still walk among us, stopping to help when others keep walking. The house is yours now. I know it's overwhelming. It's a big responsibility, but I believe you'll use it wisely. I've set up a fund with my lawyer, $50,000 a year for the next 10 years. It's to be used for the community center and for helping people in need. You'll manage it. I trust your judgment completely. But here's what I really want you to understand. The money, the house, none of that matters if you don't get this one thing right. Stay kind. The world will try to make you cynical. It will show you reasons to stop caring, to stop helping, to protect yourself first. Don't let it. Keep being the person who stops in parking lots. Keep being the person who sees someone struggling and offers a hand. That's David's real legacy, not the volunteer hours or the charitable donations. It's the simple act of choosing compassion when it would be easier to look away. You didn't just help an old lady with her groceries that day. You reminded her that her son's way of living wasn't foolish or naive. You proved that kindness isn't weakness. It's strength. I won't be there to see all the lives you'll touch. But I don't need to be. I know you'll make David proud. You'll make me proud. Keep helping people, Daniel. Keep paying it forward. And when someone thanks you, tell them to do the same for someone else. That's how we change the world. One small act at a time. I'm not sad to go. I'm at peace. Because I know the work continues. Through you. Through everyone you'll inspire. Thank you for giving an old woman hope in her final days. Thank you for being exactly who you are. With all my love and gratitude, Margaret P.S. There's a box in David's old room, on the top shelf of the closet. It's for you. Open it when you're ready. Daniel sat on those porch steps for a long time, the letter clutched in his hands, tears streaming down his face. Eventually, he stood. He unlocked the front door and walked through the house that was now his. Up the stairs, down the hallway, to David's room. It looked like it had been preserved in time. Posters from the 80s, a bookshelf full of worn paperbacks, a desk with an old lamp. Daniel opened the closet and found the box on the top shelf. Inside were David's journals, years and years of them, filled with his thoughts, his experiences, his philosophy of life, and on top a note in Margaret's handwriting. Read these, learn from him. Then write your own story. 6 months passed. Daniel stood in front of a crowd at the community center. It was packed. Kids, parents, volunteers, people from all over the neighborhood. Behind him, a banner read, "The David Williams Community Center Grand Reopening." Daniel had used part of Margaret's fund to renovate the building. New paint, fixed windows, a new kitchen for the meal program, computer lab for job training, a reading room for the kids. 6 months ago, Daniel began, I helped an old lady carry groceries to her car. I was late for work. I was stressed. I almost didn't stop. But I did, and that one choice changed my entire life. He looked out at the faces watching him, some he recognized now, people he'd helped, people who'd helped him. Margaret Williams taught me something important. She taught me that kindness isn't just a nice thing to do, it's a responsibility. When we're blessed, we bless others. When we're helped, we help others. That's how we honor the people who believed in us. A young woman in the front row raised her hand. How do we start? If we want to help but don't have money or resources, Daniel smiled. You start small. You start by stopping when you see someone who needs help. You start by caring when it would be easier not to. You start exactly where you are with exactly what you have. After the event, as Daniel cleaned up, Tyler approached him. Dude, I'm proud of you. Look at what you've built. I didn't build this, Daniel said, looking around. Margaret did. David did. I'm just continuing what they started. No, man. You're creating something new, something that's yours. Maybe Tyler was right. Maybe this was his story now, not just an echo of someone else's. Daniel drove home that night to the house on Willow Creek Road. He'd moved in 2 months ago. It still felt too big, too fancy for someone like him, but he was filling it with life. He'd started hosting dinners for the volunteers, planning meetings for the center. His mom had moved into the guest room, finally out of the care facility, finally getting better. He walked to David's room and pulled out one of the journals. He'd been reading them slowly, learning about the man whose legacy he was carrying forward. Then Daniel grabbed a blank journal he'd bought last week. He opened it to the first page and began to write. Today I helped a kid at the center learn to read. His name is Kevin, he's 8 years old. When he read his first sentence without help, his face lit up like the sun. That's why I do this. That's why Margaret chose me. Not because I'm special, but because I remember what it's like to need help, and I'm lucky enough to be able to give it now. He wrote until his hand cramped, about the people he'd met, the lives that were changing, the community growing stronger every day. Outside his window, snow began to fall. The first snow of the season. Daniel thought about Margaret, about a cold parking lot one November afternoon, about groceries and oranges rolling across the pavement, about how everything can change in a single moment of kindness. He picked up his phone and texted Tyler. Want to volunteer at the center tomorrow? We could use extra hands, Tyler replied immediately. Yeah, man. Count me in, Daniel smiled. The ripple was spreading, one person at a time, just like Margaret knew it would.